presented everything, the autopsy reports and all the reports about dogs barking and everything else. And he set the time of death at 10 p.m. So it wasn't just the local Greenwich PD who did this. I mean,
right, and he did that based on contents of her stomach.
Also the contents of the stomach.
Well, that's
and
the part that kind of gives me a bit of a pause.
Yeah.
Here, yeah.
Well, yeah, because Martha had a grilled cheese sandwich about 6:30. So that was gone from her stomach. Mm-hmm. So and the stomach takes 2 to 4 hours to clear food. So that means she could easily have been killed around 10. But her stomach also had 3 ounces of fluid in it, and she had a Coke at the Skakels, or at least part of a Coke. Mm-hmm. And the stomach obviously clears liquids a lot faster than it clears solids.
Right.
And so so the fact that she still has that after drinking all or part of a Coke at the Skakels indicates that she was not murdered hours and hours and hours after.
Unless she had been somewhere for hours and hours and then drank 3 or 4 ounces of something, which would then be in her stomach.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of the logic isn't completely perfect.
Right, because it assumes that Coke at the Skagels was the very last thing.
You don't know what she was out and about doing.
I also,
but the reason I think the time of death was around 10 is that if she was seen anywhere, if she was out and about, she was a sociable person. Mm-hmm. She wouldn't have just wandered around in the darkness and not met up with somebody, and she would have been seen by somebody, and she wasn't, not by anybody. And so that's my major reason for thinking that she could not have gone somewhere else. So right around 10 was the time of death.
This whole thing actually has me asking this very morbid question of but when you're undergoing an assault, like a really severe assault like she underwent, is your body still processing food? Right? Is your body still processing liquid? So if she was being beat over the period of 10 to 15 minutes, does that affect the time? Mm-hmm. That's just something that popped into my head. Realistically, that doesn't change the timeline that much, but I just started to think about that as a really macabre question that I guess I should ask one of our experts about.
That's what I was about to suggest. I don't know. Good question.
So listeners, if you weren't just totally turned off by that and you have the answer, email us.
Yeah, please do. Back to the night of the 30th, Dorothy Moxley fell asleep on her couch. That's Martha's mom, remember? And woke up around 1:30. Martha still wasn't home, and Dorothy was getting pretty worried by this time. So she wakes John up and asked him to go out looking for Martha. And John said he drove around for a few hours looking, but found no sign of Martha. And then he went home and went to sleep in the TV room in the basement, apparently. And during this time, Dorothy's calling all around for basically anybody that knows Martha, and called the Skakels, obviously, and a lot of other people. And nobody.
This is the next morning.
This is the wee hours of October 31st.
Wow, I'm sure they were all really happy about that.
Yeah, I'm sure they were.
I'm sure they were understanding about it, though.
Yeah, she had reason to be scared, but... And then about 8:30 on the morning of the 31st, Dorothy went over to the Skakels to ask if they had seen Martha. Michael Skakel had fallen asleep in his clothes on his bed, and when Dorothy saw him, she said that he was pale and looked a little frayed around the edges. But he had a lot to drink the night before. I didn't maybe mention what they went to the Bellhaven Club. They all drank alcohol and stuff, and continued to drink after they got back to the house. So
got it. And as teenagers, they don't know what they're doing. So.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they know what they're doing. Getting drunk is what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing when it comes to their booze.
Yeah. Well, so Michael had just woken up, and so
and he was wearing his clothes.
He was wearing his clothes from the night before,
So he had passed out.
Yeah, he passed out. He
didn't fall asleep, he passed out.
He took his shoes off and then just conked out.
But also, I'd like to clarify, he was wearing his clothes from the night before. Mm-hmm. He wasn't, missing his blood-soaked pants somewhere.
No, I mean, I don't know if he was wearing the exact same clothes that he was wearing that night before when he went over to the Terrian's house. He was wearing clothes.
Theoretically, he was wearing the same clothes if he went to sleep in his clothes, though.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
In theory. Okay. I mean, there's no reason to come home, take off your blood-stained clothes, and then get redressed and go to bed.
Yeah, you would put your PJs on.
You probably, or just go to bed in your underwear or something. Anyway, Michael searched the house and the grounds of the house, and then their gardener, Franz Vittine, went and checked their RV. They had this RV called a Revcon. I don't know what brand that is, but check that because sometimes
probably big and expensive.
Oh, I'm sure it was the best there was. Yeah, but apparently, she apparently Martha and the kids like to party in the RevCon occasionally, so that was worth checking. But Martha was not there. So about noon, Martha's friend Sheila McGuire, who was also 15, and she lived in a house just to the south of the Moxley house. She was cutting across the Moxley yard, headed towards Walsh Lane, when she spotted Martha's body under the big pine tree. And so she goes to the Moxley house to tell them what she's seen. Because, I didn't mention, by the way, the whole neighborhood knows by this time, and the whole neighborhood is out.
Yeah, because they were woken up at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, have you seen my daughter?
Yeah. So a lot of people were out looking for Martha, and then Sheila just happens to find her by accident. You'll be happy to know she was never a suspect, by the way. And then, of course, the police are called, and then, again, the first 2 Greenwich policemen who showed up confirmed that she was dead, called for more troops, and again, they noticed the handle of the golf club sticking out of her neck. And, in fact, one of them mentioned it to his wife that night when he got home.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and she remembered him saying that, too.
Well, it's pretty grisly, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal murder. And, of course, the Moxley family doctor was called in to confirm that she was actually dead, and he noticed the golf club handle laying on the ground next to Martha. So, again, remember the golf club handle. And Dorothy, for her part, did not go outside just to view Martha's body, understandably.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't want that to be her last memory of Martha.
No.
I can't blame her for that. The initial theory by the police and the people of Greenwich was that it was committed by some random transient who'd wandered through the neighborhood.
So we're on theories now.
Well,
not
quite there, but that was the initial theory.
That was the working theory of the police.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that was what everybody thought. I mean, oh my God, this is Bellhaven, Connecticut. This is like these are the best people on earth. There's no murderers living in our town. But maybe there was. Of course, Tommy Skakel was the last person to see Martha alive, so he was grilled pretty good. In fact, the night of the 31st, they hauled him down. After questioning Tommy and all the other kids, they hauled Tommy down to the police station and grilled him for about 6 hours.
Well, it's got to suck, because he was to put a lot of work into his Halloween costume and didn't get to use it.
I know, the poor guy. Well, it kind of sucks for Michael, too, because he and Martha had made plans to go trick-or-treating on the night of the 31st, and, well, his date was gone, so let's scotch that.
Yeah.
The police, while they were over on the 31st at the Skakel household, they had already established by finding the pieces of the golf club that it was a Tony Penna golf club. Yeah, and a couple of Greenwich policemen noticed that there was a Tony Penna golf club, which was a 4-iron. The murder weapon was a Tony Penna 6-iron. They noticed this 4-iron in a barrel in the family's mudroom. The barrel had whatever you would have in your mudroom, umbrella
stand or whatever it is,
whatever. Yeah. So they noticed this. 2 days later, they came back and they asked permission to search the house. Number one, and they asked permission to take the 4-iron, which was still there in the barrel. And so they took that, and of course, it was engraved with the words Mrs. R.K. Skakel on the handle. And they did search. According to the police, they searched the Skakel house pretty thoroughly and didn't find anything. So eventually, this case kind of went cold. I mean, they investigated Tommy for a long time. They questioned him many times. They gave him polygraphs twice, which were inconclusive. And they really went after a bunch of other people too. I mentioned Ken Littleton, and I'll talk about a few others also. But then eventually the case went cold until the 1990s, and then there was a sudden. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here. But there was this rumor that came out during the rape trial of William Kennedy Smith, who was another Kennedy cousin.
There's a lot of Kennedy cousins.
Yeah.
A lot of Kennedys.
Yeah, there are. And so he was on trial for rape, and of course that received national attention. Some of the tabloids, for some reason, started circulating a rumor that he had been present at the Skakel household on the night of the murder. And that wasn't true. I
love the tabloids.
Oh, yeah, you gotta love the press, I know. But of course it wasn't true. But that brought some more attention back to this case because it was long since cold.
Maybe 15, 20 years at that point.
Oh yeah. Police announced they were going to look into the case again. I mean, at this point, Rushton Sr., a.k.a. Rucky, was really tired of living under this cloud of suspicion. It was mainly over Tommy. And
that's right. He commissioned the report.
Yeah. In 92, he hired a group called Sutton Investigations and these were a bunch of former FBI agents and stuff, and they were a private investigation organization. He said, "We want you to solve this case. Sky's the limit on when it comes to the cash." And so they
fully expecting that it was going to exonerate his entire family.
Well, yeah, because if he knew it was a member of his family, why the hell would you do something like that?
Yeah,
right. I mean, so yeah, he hired them to do this, and that's when things kind of like got out of hand. They were questioning Tommy and Michael, and Michael changed his story. Turns out he didn't just go straight to bed when he got home. He actually went back out and went to go window peeping. There was this
Tommy
lady.
Or Michael?
Michael did.
Okay.
Tommy? Yeah. So Michael went out to go window peeping. Apparently there was some local lady who liked to walk around naked and sometimes after dark, and so
which to a 15-year-old boy is just irresistible.
Oh yeah,
in the 70s, particularly, right? I mean, before the internet.
That's a good point too. Yeah, and it turns out her lights were out and there was no action there. So he had this thought that, well, hey, maybe I'll go by the Moxley's house and see if I can wake up Martha, and see if she wants to make out or something. Actually, I think his words were, maybe I'll see if I can get a kiss from Martha. She likes me. So he climbs a tree that outside in the front of the house and tosses a few pebbles at her window and calls out her name and gets no response. And it's believed that he actually was outside a second-story window that was actually her brother John's bedroom.
That wouldn't have gone good. Yeah, if somebody had been home, he would not have been happy with the results he got.
Yeah, not really. And Martha's bedroom was actually on the third floor. She had the entire third floor to herself. And so he had totally had the wrong room. But John, I think, was at that point was downstairs watching the evening news with his mother. So he wasn't in the bedroom. So Michael at that point, I don't know how a tactful way to put this, he started masturbating.
That's as tactful as it can be said.
Just like sitting in the tree outside of John's bedroom?
Yeah, he decided to just start playing a little pocket pool. And according to Mark Furman, he reached orgasm. According to RFK Jr., he did not. He suddenly realized what a stupid thing he was doing. And so he put it away, climbed back down out of the tree, and left. He walked towards... Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Why does it matter?
What's that?
If he reached completion?
Completion or not?
Because if he reached completion, then he would have left some DNA evidence at the scene.
Which nobody collected anything at that location.
On a branch in a tree, like next to a window on the other side of the house?
Yeah. Well, it was thought, and Mark Furman, and there was one other guy, an old childhood classmate of Michael's named Andy Pugh.
Well, this guy was a piece of work himself, but
Andy reestablished contact with Michael, and Michael was thinking, like, hey, let's start hanging out. It's been too long. We should get to know each other again, and all yada yada. And Andy said, look, I really have to know what really happened with Martha before I can really, in good conscience, do this. And so Michael told him this story. This was back about 1985, I think. And
turns out the guy was still a prep school jerk.
Yeah, and Andy Pugh, when he heard about him climbing the tree, he assumed it was the pine tree underneath which the body had been found.
I see, okay.
Because, well, for one thing, all the kids in the neighborhood climbed that tree. It was a big tree with big, strong, well-spaced branches, and it was a great climbing tree. But it was 160 feet away from the Moxley house. So you can't exactly climb that tree and toss pebbles at Martha's window.
Yeah, that's not a good spying tree.
Yeah.
And it's also on the wrong side of the house.
Okay.
So if the tree...
Even worse spying tree.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of just like Furman's just like dragging his name through the mud a little bit by saying, like, and he reached orgasm.
And got it all over the body.
Yeah, look at what a perv this guy is.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Is the intention, yeah.
Well, and what he was saying is that Michael changed his story in 1992 because at that time DNA evidence was becoming a thing. Yeah.
So he was trying to explain away.
So he was trying to explain away the presence of his semen
But
on the body.
I don't think there was semen on the body.
No. There wasn't.
Okay.
No, there wasn't.
Great. Just wanted to clear that up real quick here.
No, but interestingly, at the trial in 2002, the prosecution said that there was.
But it was lost. Let me guess, it was lost.
Well, I haven't seen any evidence that there ever was any semen that was even collected.
Yeah. You would think that if they had collected it, they would have gone ahead and had it run and just marched into court and said, printed up the results on a giant placard and said, guess who?
Yeah, well, they could definitely, even before the advent of bodily fluid, you can get blood type and other stuff, You
I like that you're calling it the advent of DNA.
Yeah, whatever, but...
DNA testing?
Yeah, I guess DNA testing, yeah, that's a good point.
DNA's been around for a while.
Came into existence.
DNA's been around for at least several hundred years.
At least.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Okay, so
anyway, that's Furman's theory of it is that that's why he made up this story in 1992, and so suspicion. Michael had never been a suspect in this case. and suddenly suspicion shifted to him.
Because he admitted to being a peeping Tom?
Or trying to be.
Because he.
No, there was no trying.
It really looked. When I first heard this story and I heard that tale about the whole thing in the tree and everything, I thought, oh, that's it. He's guilty of sin. He's obviously trying to explain away the presence of DNA on the body. And so he actually had an explanation for it. He had actually talked about this, like I said, to Andy Pugh, I think, in the mid-'80s. And he also had another guy named Michael Meredith, who was a guy that he had been... Michael, by the way, not too long after the murder, was shipped off to this school for troubled children called Elon. It's in Maine, and there they had this sort of brutal regimen where they did beat people and got in their faces and everything. It's for kids that had drug and alcohol problems.
A boot camp situation, kind of.
Yeah, boot camp, except like even more brutal.
Right. It was the 70s, so tough love was bloody your nose.
Yeah, and so in 1987, Michael Meredith was living temporarily with Michael
Skakel,
because they were working on the possibility of like a sort of tell-all book about Elon and schools like Elon and the whole scandal about that. And so at that point he told Michael Meredith that story also, which, don't ask me why, it's not a story I would be telling anybody.
No.
Yeah, yeah. And also RFK Jr. says he told him that story back in the early 80s. So, again, Michael maybe talks a little bit too much.
I was going to say, he may just have a very poor filter.
Yeah, he sounds like he doesn't have very good filter.
Yeah, I know guys that tell you things and you're like, what? Why?
No, TMI, dude.
Don't ever tell anybody that again.
Alternately, somebody did say to him, those are situations where they said, well, what really happened with the whole Martha Moxley? Like, you know something more, don't you? And he said, yeah, okay, yes. This is actually what happened.
Yeah.
I was trying to protect myself. I was 17. 17? He was 17.
He was 15.
15. I was 15. I didn't know better. I thought I was going to get in huge trouble for being this peeping Tom.
And, oh no, you can see
so
why.
If the cops had caught him whacking it, he'd have been in serious trouble.
No,
I'm sure his dad wouldn't have been happy either.
In his 15-year-old mind, it was better to just lie than tell the truth. And
hell yeah.
Again, later he realized,
yeah.
all right, I'll just, I've told enough people, I can say, hey, I had this problem when I was a child, and it's better now, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think that it's all that suspicious that he lied the day after the murder.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be telling that story, but I just wouldn't have changed my story later.
Right.
No.
Yeah, not really.
Should we get into theories here?
Yeah. Okay. And I think
we've got the whole thing laid out.
Got it out
we're ready
there,
for
right?
it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of suspects here. First off, of course, the random transient theory,
which is silly.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's my favorite.
Yeah, because as I said, Martha was found with her panties rolled down, which indicates that the attacker was somebody that she knew. That's certainly the inference that the police drew from this. And so, your average stranger on a dark cold night, you got to just pull down your pants and roll down your panties.
15-year-old girl, no.
So the one thing that I was joking when I was saying this is my favorite theory, but I don't necessarily agree with it had to be somebody that she knew. It could very well have been a threat that was going to lead to a sexual assault. Somebody could have had a knife to her throat and said, you pull down your pants and you pull down your underwear, or I'm going to slit your throat.
Okay, but question. If somebody had a knife to her, why beat her with the golf club and stab her with the golf club? Why not just kill her with the knife?
Maybe they had the golf club across her neck. I don't know. Choking her, saying, I will choke the life out of you if you don't pull your pants down.
Seems like there would be some markings there.
I don't know. I'm just saying that I don't think that it is so outlandish as the both of you do.
Well, there is an alternative theory, which of course is she got whacked once on the head, which is enough to disorient, or maybe even KO her pretty good, and then her pants and panties get pulled down, and then a more brutal beating takes place after that.
Because something happens, right?
Yeah. So even though I kind of suspect it was somebody she knew, I got to say it is possible.
Well, and I will fully admit that a random transient just happening to wander into this gated community and not be seen by anybody and not raise any alarms, I find that very suspicious. I don't think that it probably happened, but I also can't say that this evidence of it couldn't have been. I don't say. I just don't agree with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other reason is there's so many other good suspects. And,
Are there really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have one.
Okay, our next guy, Franz Vitin, who I think was born in Yugoslavia, had served in the